Okay, Game Art students, in this video we're going to look at another component that is a very useful building block to making our game levels. In this video we're going to talk about volumes. Now we can find our volumes under the Quickly Add dropdown here as volumes. We can also choose the Place Actors panel, which opens all of that dropdown into their own side panel here, and you can see that volumes have their own section. So volumes are basically invisible zones that do code for us. And there's a bunch of different useful ones. Specifically here, the blocking volume, which is basically the classic video game invisible wall. So if I didn't want the player to be able to walk off the back here, I could add this invisible wall. And you can see here, if I hit play, I can't walk this way anymore. Other useful volumes that we'll use for other projects are the nav mesh bounds and nav mesh modifier, which will help when we have enemies that we want to be able to path around a zone. Things like a physics volume that will let us control stuff like gravity or a push from wind in a zone. And trigger volumes, which we could use to execute code when the player collides with them. In fact, we'll be doing those as collision volumes in specific blueprints. But finally, I want to talk about the post-process volume, which is both here under volumes and also is first under visual effects. The post-process volume is how we can change overall the look of a number of things here. And by default, the basic level does not come with one. There is one particular setting that we always want to turn on. So this volume will make any settings that we choose over here on the right affect only within itself. But if we search and choose INF for infinite, we can turn on infinite extent, which makes this volume affect the whole world instead of just a specific zone. And then we can just move this guy out of the way. The default setting that we definitely want to turn on, we can find by typing the word brightness. I'm just going to type bright, and we already have it here. There are two settings here for exposure. One is min EV 100, and the other is max EV 100. And basically, this is the default eye adaptation that is built in to a level as soon as you spawn. It basically makes it so that if your camera looks down at something, you can see it gets much brighter, and then if we look up, it has to recalibrate. It's basically when you go outside in bright light, your eyes adjusting to the brightness or the darkness. And frustratingly, it makes it really hard to correctly light your levels if you have interior spaces, exterior spaces, or if you want to have like a particular sunset or other looks. It always seems to move everything to a middle. So the way we turn this off is by making these two numbers the same. So you click them both on, and specifically, we want to make them both 0. This makes it so that this is sort of our default normal lighting, and you can see it remains consistent. There are some other interesting settings that you could experiment with in here. There's things like vignette, which will turn on sort of a darkened edge of your screen, which you can see here. There are things like chromatic aberration, which makes it's like an old school camera or VHS effect. It basically makes it so that colors separate at the edge of your vision. So you can see here on the edge, I'm getting sort of the different channels of color separating. It's a very like looking through a camera effect. You could also turn on lens flare, if I can find it in here, or bloom, which can be kind of interesting, but often are just sort of distracting. But turning this on, and now if I find and look at my sun, we'll get a J.J. Abrams style lens flare right in our camera. But at the very least, make sure to zero out your brightness, and that will set up at least our basic volumes for the level.